I worked through chemotherapy and never missed a deadline. At the quarterly review, my supervisor said, "We appreciate the effort, but we need someone with more stamina." I was let go without a handshake. A month later, their biggest client asked one simple question that no one could answer until I'd been working at that marketing firm for 7 years. 7 long years, and I was damn good at what I did. I was the senior copywriter. I knew every client, every product, every strategy inside out. I was the one who stayed late when deadlines piled up, who took calls from panicked clients on weekends, who picked up the slack when others fumbled. Then, last summer, I got the diagnosis, stage 2 breast cancer. It hit me like a freight train. But I was stubborn as hell. I told my boss, Greg, that I could handle it. I'd do my treatments, but I'd keep working. I didn't ask for special treatment. I didn't even ask to work from home more than once a week. I powered through chemo sessions, the nausea, the fatigue. My hair fell out, but I kept showing up to meetings, kept delivering the work. Deadlines didn't slip. Clients didn't notice a thing. Except, I guess, Greg did. At the quarterly review, he sat across from me with that fake serious expression, the one where his lips pressed tight, like he was holding back a smirk. Next to him was Ashley, the account manager who'd been gunning for my job ever since she joined last year. She barely hid the satisfaction on her face as Greg told me they were making a change. I sat there, stunned. My hands shook so bad I had to hold them in my lap. "Greg, I've done everything you've asked. I haven't missed a deadline." I know, he said, in that patronizing voice. "And we appreciate the effort, but we're looking for someone with more stamina." That word again. Like I was weak. Like I wasn't enough. I asked for a handshake, some acknowledgement of the years I'd given them. Greg didn't even look me in the eye as he stood up and walked out of the room. I packed up my desk that day, numb. Nobody said goodbye except for Mike from IT, who muttered, "Sorry, man," under his breath. I went home, sat on my couch, and cried for hours. The anger didn't come until later, when the shock wore off. When I realized they'd taken my loyalty, my hard work, and tossed me aside like trash the moment I wasn't perfect. But the universe has a way of turning things around when you least expect it. About a month after they let me go, I got a call from an old contact, Dan from Keystone Industries. Keystone was the biggest client at the firm, the one that brought in 1/3 of their revenue. Dan sounded annoyed. "Hey, I've been trying to get a hold of Greg, but he's not answering. We're in a meeting with the board, and they need to know the status of the year-long campaign. Nobody here has the details. Can you help us?" I almost laughed. See, that campaign was my baby. I'd been the one working with Keystone for years, crafting their brand message, keeping track of their market research, their customer profiles, their launch schedules. I knew every moving part of that project. I had every detail in my head and in my files at home. Nobody at the firm had bothered to learn it. Greg sure as hell didn't know. Ashley? She barely understood the product. I took a deep breath. "Dan," I said, "I'm not at the firm anymore. They let me go last month." There was a long pause. "You're kidding. Who's running the account now?" "I don't know. But it wasn't handed off to me. They didn't ask me to train anyone." Silence. Then Dan swore under his breath. "Listen," he said, "can you meet me? Tomorrow morning. My office. 9 a.m. I hesitated. Then I said yes. What happened next? Well, that's when the tables started to turn. So, I showed up at Dan's office the next morning. I didn't sleep at all the night before. My stomach was tight the whole time. I had this mix of nerves and pure rage bubbling under my skin. I kept thinking about Greg's face when he told me I didn't have enough stamina. The way Ashley sat there, fake smiling like she was already moving her stuff into my office. I put on my old navy blazer, even though it was loose on me now. I'd lost weight from chemo, and the fabric hung off my shoulders like a reminder of how worn down I'd become. My hair hadn't grown back yet, so I wore a scarf. I looked in the mirror before I left and barely recognized myself. But I told myself I wasn't going there to impress anyone. I was going because they needed me, whether they liked it or not. Keystone's office was downtown. When I walked through the glass doors, I felt like an outsider, like I didn't belong anymore. The receptionist at the front desk gave me a weird look, probably wondering what I was doing there. I kept walking, head down, straight to the elevator. Dan's office was on the 14th floor. The place smelled like coffee and printer paper. When I walked in, Dan was pacing back and forth, phone in his hand, looking like he was ready to explode. As soon as he saw me, he hung up and waved me in fast. "Thank God you're here," he said. "We're in a mess." He didn't waste time. He sat me down and told me everything. Keystone had a board meeting that afternoon. The board was pissed because they couldn't get straight answers about the campaign. They wanted numbers, dates, strategy, real details. And Dan had none of it because nobody at the firm knew what the hell they were doing. Dan's voice was tight, like he was holding in a scream. "I've been calling Greg all week. He won't return my messages. Ashley's been useless. All she does is throw around buzzwords like synergy and pivot. Every time I ask a real question, she deflects." I sat there, listening, and I could feel it building inside me, this mix of anger, satisfaction, and pure disbelief. They'd fired me. They told me I didn't have enough stamina. And now they were drowning without me. I should have felt happy, but I just felt this deep, bitter ache. Dan looked at me, desperate. "Look, I don't even know if this is allowed, but we need you. Just for this meeting. Can you do it?" I sat there, silent for a second. Part of me wanted to tell him to screw off, to let them crash and burn. But then I thought about it. No, they didn't get to walk away from this. If I was going to do this, I was going to do it on my terms. "I'll do it," I said. "But I'm not doing this for free. If you want me, I'm an independent consultant. Hourly rate. Full control over my materials. And I want it in writing." Dan didn't even hesitate. "Done. Whatever you want." That afternoon, I sat in on the board meeting. It was over Zoom because I couldn't risk being in a room full of people. I sat there in my home office, scarf on my head, pale, thin, tired, but when the questions started, I was the one who had the answers. All of them. When the CEO asked about the Q3 ad spend, I had the breakdown ready, every dollar accounted for. When they asked how the new tagline tested across the Midwest market, I had the survey data in front of me. When they wanted to know how the digital rollout was staggered over the next 3 months, I pulled up the exact schedule. The board members glanced at each other. One of them even raised an eyebrow. Dan sat there like he wanted to sink into the floor. And when they asked, "Who's leading this campaign at the firm now?" there was this dead silence that filled the whole Zoom call. Nobody could answer. And that's when I knew this wasn't over. Not even close. The boardroom went quiet after that question. You could feel the weight of it sitting in the air, heavy like a stone dropped in water. Dan didn't say a word. His eyes flicked between the board members and the screen, waiting for someone, anyone, to speak. Greg wasn't on the call. Neither was Ashley. Just me, on the little square in the corner of the Zoom, scarf tied around my head, looking like I'd been dragged through hell and back, and still holding all the answers they needed. Finally, one of the board members, an older man with thick glasses, leaned forward, his voice low but cutting. "I'm sorry, but if this woman is the only one who understands our campaign, why was she not part of the firm's team for this presentation?" Dan shifted in his chair, cleared his throat, and tried to cover for them. She recently transitioned out of the firm." "Transitioned out," the man repeated, raising an eyebrow. I could see the other board members exchange glances, the kind of look that says something stinks. They didn't have the full story yet, but I could see the seeds planting right there. Another board member, a woman named Marcia, jumped in. Her voice was sharper. Dan, you told us everything was under control. That you had a team in place. Clearly, that's not the case. Dan's face flushed. He tried to pivot, talking about how they were in the middle of restructuring, how new staff were coming up to speed. I sat back, watching him scramble, feeling this deep, grim satisfaction. The kind that comes from knowing you're the one thing holding a crumbling house together. Then Marcia turned to me. Can you send us the complete strategy deck after this call? I nodded. Absolutely. I'll send it as a standalone consultant. Dan looked like someone had kicked him in the gut. He opened his mouth, but Marcia cut him off. We'll discuss next steps after we review the materials. The call ended. I sat there for a second, staring at the screen. My hands were shaking, not from fear, but from adrenaline, from anger, from the weight of everything that had just shifted. Then my phone buzzed. It was an email from Dan, just one line, call me. I didn't call him. Not that day. Not the next. I needed to think. A week later, the dominoes started falling. I started getting emails from other clients, the ones I'd worked with at the firm for years. They were hearing things. Rumors that Keystone was shopping around for a new firm. They wanted to know if I was available for consulting. I didn't respond right away. Then Dan emailed again. This time, his tone was different. Look, we need to talk. The board is furious. They're demanding answers. Greg's not answering calls, and Ashley, she's floundering. Can we meet? And that's when I knew I had them exactly where I wanted. I let Dan's email sit in my inbox for 2 days. I didn't reply, didn't even open it again. Just left it there, staring back at me like a ticking bomb. I wanted him to sweat. By the 3rd day, my phone started ringing. Dan called 3 times in a row. Then I got a text from Ashley. It was short and weirdly casual, hey, can we talk? I didn't reply. But that night, I got an email that made me sit up straight. It was from the CEO of Keystone himself, Richard Trent. Big name, old school type, the kind of guy who shook hands too hard and looked through you when he spoke. His message was short, we'd like to discuss the future of the campaign. Can you meet with us this week? No mention of the firm. No mention of Greg or Ashley. Just me. I replied within an hour. I kept it polite, professional. I told them I was available for a meeting, but I was working as an independent consultant now, and if they wanted my help, we'd need to discuss terms. The next morning, I got a Zoom link and a calendar invite for a Thursday meeting. When Thursday came, I logged on early. It was just me, Richard Trent, and 2 board members. Dan wasn't there. Neither was Greg. Neither was Ashley. Richard got straight to the point. We've been reviewing the campaign documents you sent over. We're impressed. Frankly, we're concerned that the team at the firm hasn't been forthcoming with us. We're considering moving the entire account elsewhere. I sat there, trying to keep my voice steady, but inside, my heart was racing. I'm happy to continue working with you as an independent consultant, I said. Richard nodded. That's exactly what we want. We're prepared to sign a 6-month contract. You'll oversee the entire campaign. Full creative control, direct access to our team. I swallowed hard. 6 months. That was huge. But Richard wasn't done. His voice got quieter, colder. We'll also be reviewing the firm's role in this situation. Their leadership, or lack of it, has been unacceptable. I could feel it in the air. Greg and Ashley were in trouble, real trouble. And this was my chance to make sure they faced the consequences. I accepted the offer. By the end of the day, I had a signed contract in my inbox. It felt surreal. Just a month ago, they told me I didn't have the stamina. Now, I was running the whole damn campaign, with a six-figure contract that made my old salary look like peanuts. That night, I poured myself a glass of wine and sat at my kitchen table, just staring at the contract. Then my phone buzzed again. It was Greg. A single text, "Can we talk?" I didn't reply. Not yet. The next day, the fallout started. The next day, I woke up to a flood of emails. The subject lines told me everything. Urgent, client update needed, Keystone. Immediate attention required, Greg's out of office, can you step in? It was like watching a building collapse in slow motion. They were scrambling. By noon, I got a LinkedIn message from Ashley. She didn't even bother with small talk. Please call me. We're in a tough spot with Keystone. They're threatening to pull the account. I sat there, staring at the screen, feeling the weight of it settle in. It wasn't just a rumor anymore, Keystone was walking. And the firm had no one to blame but themselves. Later that afternoon, I finally got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I let it go to voicemail. The message was from Greg. His voice was tight, forced calm. Hey, listen. I think we need to clear the air. Things have gotten complicated with Keystone, and I think it's in everyone's best interest if we figure this out. Let me know when you're free to talk. I didn't call him back. Not that day. Not the next. Because the next morning, I got an email from Dan. A different kind of email. He was out. Fired. No fanfare. Just a cold line in the middle of the firm's company-wide announcement, "We wish Dan well in his future endeavors." Ashley was still there, barely. I heard from a mutual contact that she was hanging on by a thread, spending most of her days in meetings, trying to explain why half of the firm's biggest account had just slipped through their fingers. I kept my head down, focused on the Keystone campaign. It felt good, no, it felt powerful, to be the one they had to turn to. They sent me questions, and I answered when I felt like it. They asked for updates, and I gave them what they needed, not a word more. But I wasn't done yet. Because a week later, I got an unexpected email. It was from Richard Trent at Keystone again. Short, to the point. "We're reviewing our contract with the firm. If you have any information you think we should be aware of, please reach out." And that's when I realized, this wasn't just about me. This was about exposing the whole mess. And I had the receipts. Years of them. I had emails. Project files. Notes on campaigns that Greg had taken credit for. Records of times Ashley cut corners, missed deadlines, threw junior staff under the bus. I had proof of the times they covered up mistakes, blamed others, even padded invoices. It was all sitting on my old hard drive. I stared at that email for a long time. And I thought, if they want the truth, I can give them the truth. The question was, how far was I willing to take this? I sat with that email for hours. I stared at it like it was a loaded gun sitting on my kitchen table. Because in a way, it was. Every file, every email, every note I'd kept over the years was sitting in my hands. All the times Greg had lied to clients, taken credit for my work, covered up Ashley's mistakes. The times they padded hours, billed for things that weren't even done, and swept it all under the rug. I had the receipts. I thought about all the years I'd spent killing myself for that firm. Working through chemo, staying up late, missing family events, pushing through when I should have been in a hospital bed. And they threw me out like I was nothing. I thought about the look on Greg's face when he told me I didn't have enough stamina. So I hit reply. I told Richard Trent at Keystone I had information. I told him I'd be happy to share it in a formal meeting. I attached a few sample emails, nothing too damning, just enough to show I wasn't bluffing. Just enough to open the door. The next day, I was in a Zoom meeting with the Keystone board, Richard Trent, and their legal team. I laid it all out. How Greg had inflated project hours on invoices for years. How Ashley had consistently dropped the ball, missed deadlines, and blamed the junior staff, who were too scared to speak up. How Greg had taken credit for the Keystone campaign strategy that I built from scratch while I was sick, while I was fighting for my life. I showed them the emails, the timelines, the documents. I told them how they fired me under the excuse of stamina right after I'd kept their biggest account from falling apart during my chemotherapy. The board sat there, stunned. Richard thanked me for my honesty. A week later, the firm's world burned down. Keystone terminated their contract. That was over a third of the firm's revenue, gone overnight. But it didn't stop there. I heard from contacts that other clients started asking questions. Rumors spread about the invoices, the mismanagement, the lies. Within 2 weeks, 4 more clients left. Greg was fired. Not a quiet, slip-out-the-back-door firing, no, this was public. An internal email went out to the whole firm. Due to issues with client trust and leadership, Greg will be leaving the company effective immediately. Ashley didn't last much longer. She tried to scramble, tried to pitch to other clients, but it didn't work. I heard through the grapevine that she broke down during a client pitch, couldn't answer basic questions, stumbled over campaign details she never understood. She was let go by the end of the month. The firm itself? It didn't make it through the year. They tried to pivot, tried to recover, but the damage was done. The word was out, they were sloppy, dishonest, and reckless. As for me? I kept working with Keystone. The 6-month contract turned into a year, and then longer. I built my own small consulting business, working on my own terms. But it wasn't all clean. Because here's the truth, I let the anger drive me. I let the revenge sit in my chest, hot and heavy, for too long. I was so focused on taking them down, I didn't see what it was doing to me. I burned some bridges I didn't need to. I was sharp with people who didn't deserve it, friends, family, even a few clients who had nothing to do with Greg or Ashley. There were nights I couldn't sleep, running it all through my head, wondering if I'd taken it too far. But when I think about the day they fired me, when I think about sitting across from Greg in that cold conference room, hearing him say I didn't have enough stamina after everything I gave them, no. I don't regret it. Not one damn bit. Sometimes karma needs a little push. And I gave it one hell of a shove.